Ding, 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 ding. According to this, it says, according to my clock, it says that it is 2 o'clock out here in the great Pacific Northwest, where it's raining. I don't know if it's raining today or not. I haven't even been outside. Look at that. I've got my drapes, my curtains are closed and everything like that. Okay, so it's 1600 in Elgin, Illinois. Thanks, Dennis. And but thanks everybody for joining me today. This is going to be interesting because, you know, instead of just coming in with a purely prepared presentation as I have done in the past, you know, this time I thought, well, heck, you know what? I keep getting questions from you guys during the sessions, and then I occasionally get emails from people and stuff. And I thought, well, why not try and do something where maybe I can just specifically talk about some things that you have on your mind or on your plate that you would like to have some help with, and why not spend a few minutes today going through that? So, of course, I send out these email blasts, you know, totally spam you to death with all this stuff saying, send me your questions, register and send me your questions. And I've got pages of questions here, you know, that you guys have been sending in. You know, some of them, I've highlighted some of them. I mean, there's just no way I'm going to be able to get through all the questions today, but here's what I'm thinking. Okay, first of all, I'm thinking that I'm going to go through these questions today as best as I possibly can. I'm going to answer them as best as I possibly can. My objective is to look for those questions. What I did with this was I looked for those questions that I thought were great questions. I mean, they're all great questions. I was looking for questions that you guys would send that I thought would help more than just one person. And I looked for kind of groups of questions. So like for example, I got a bunch of categories. Now, you know that the three primary categories that I'm looking for are marketing, and then of course innovation and branding. But even within there, I started seeing some related themes and some related comments and questions in there. And so I'm going to kind of try to put a few of them together and talk to them in kind of some sort of semblance of order or something like that. Now you'll notice, let's see, where over there down in the bottom, normally I just have the Q&A part opened up, and I don't really have a text chat thing going on there. But I thought with this one today, while I still have the Q&A one open, and I will do my best to kind of pay attention to that and go back in there if you have some type of follow-up question with maybe something I'm talking about. Okay, if you come up with a brand new question that is not what I'm talking about, then I'll probably have to save that for later on. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to maybe try and test the chat feature this time, because as I'm talking about some of these questions, you might have some of your own comments to make about this, and feel free to stick those in down there in the text chat. Send them out to everybody. If you see somebody who asks a question that you think you should answer privately, you can always do that. But feel free to jump in there. And also, when this is finished, at least I believe, and I will find out for sure, we will all find out, I archive this later on, all right, or immediately afterwards, and you will have access to the archived webinar for free. And maybe, I think, that also means that you'll have access to the chat as well. If not, then I'll make sure that gets available to you. But in the meantime, if I don't get to your question today, I'm thinking, and I obviously want to get feedback from you guys after this is over with, if you still think this is a good idea, because we can kind of continue doing this stuff on a fairly regular basis, where maybe once a month or every couple of weeks or something like that, I come on and I answer some questions like this for you guys. And be sure to stick around, because I got a couple of big announcements. In particular, I got one big announcement to make at the end that I want to talk about. But anyway, so the categories that I got in this batch of questions, kind of in the marketing part of the category, the two primary areas in in marketing that people were asking questions about dealt with social media. Now there's a big shock, right? I mean, that's obviously, one of the biggest conundrums, shall we say, for businesses today. And so we'll talk about that. Hopefully you've been reading some of my blog posts, and so you won't be surprised by some of the things that I say. But I do have a couple of things to say about social media for that. And then competition as well. People were asking about, how do you compete as far as marketing wise goes in different situations, and so we'll talk about those. Then we'll talk about innovation. The main area that it seemed that people were asking me about when it came to innovation was their frustration with innovation in a couple of different ways, and so we'll talk about that. And then branding, which is my third primary area. And there were a couple of people who kind of got into the question of logos and kind of how to be consistent with your branding efforts and things like that. There was one type of question that came up more than once that I thought was rather interesting that fell into one of these three categories. And the reason why I think this is interesting is because this is something that has been on my own plate a lot lately, a lot. And I've been really studying it, and I've been looking at it really hard. And I've actually even considered doing a product about this particular question. And that question is basically about productivity, about how do we how do we become how do we be as productive as possible during the day and get the things done that we want to get done. So anyway, so we'll talk about that here in a second too, and like I said, we'll get into some other stuff. Now I've got two big questions. Let's see if I got these things set up here. All right, there were two questions that came up, two of the most important questions that I received. I want to answer those right out of the box. Okay, and the first question was, do you love me? Now, I don't know who this person is that asked me this question. Her name is Kay, all right, somewhere, and I don't know why she decided that she needed to ask me that question in this very serious environment, but, you're just going to have to contact me privately, if you possibly can. So anyway, so that question was very important. And the next question was, how was Kelly's first year in college? And I want to thank you for asking that question. I don't remember who did ask me that question, but thanks. Kelly's first year in college is going to be, this is her last week. She is done on Thursday. Kay is going down to pick her up on Thursday and bring her home after her first year. I can safely say it was quite the interesting experience for her, I'm sure. Being a student athlete, the demands of being a student athlete, and balancing a full-time school college, plus being basically a full-time athlete as well, her job being a student athlete, that was quite interesting. But I think she did great. I think she just did fantastic. I think she had a great time. I think that she probably learned a lot about herself and about how to be productive, right? How to balance her own time and energy. I think she would like to have played a little better golf, but she did okay. I wasn't unhappy with that. So anyway, so those are the two most important questions, and we should just start getting right into the Q&A. So the first one being the marketing questions. I'm going to kind of just go through here and pull out the ones that I find to be the biggest ones of all, and of course the first part of the marketing was the social media. So here was one of the questions. How do we find ROI? Or let me skip up ahead. I'm gonna hold on. Here we go. Here's the one I want to ask first. Is social media for real, or is it just hype? Be interesting to see some of your comments on this. My answer to that question is yes. That's my answer to the question. Yes, it's for real, and yes, it's hype. As I have said, many of you have heard me talk about this. I've talked about this in some of my speeches recently, things like that. To me, social media is kind of the current shiny object that everybody's enamored with. And yeah, it's a very, very big deal. But the problem is, and here's where I think it kind of comes from, is that I don't believe social media I don't believe social media was initially set up to even be approached by a business from a business perspective. They were, Twitter and Facebook. Well, actually, long before Twitter and Facebook, if you go back into the MySpace, or what was the? And there was one before MySpace. If anybody remembers it, just stick it down there in the chat area. But there was one before MySpace. Some of you might not even know what MySpace is. MySpace was really giant, huge. It was the Facebook before Facebook. And all of these were designed for people and affinity groups to kind of get together and talk to each other. MySpace initially was primarily designed for bands who could feature themselves, bands who could not get... Friendster. Thank you, Bridget. Friendster was the one I was trying to remember. And that one was, I believe that was before MySpace as well. Friendster is no longer around. MySpace is around. Initially, it was started out for local rock band or just local bands to be able to kind of communicate with their fans. It was a place for them to do that. So it was like a community effort for bands to be able to do that. And I think it's kind of come full circle back from, it started to expand out and become more of a bigger thing, more like a Facebook. And then ultimately it's now kind of come back full circle to where it's now back to primarily working with music acts and bands and things like that. So the idea that social media back in the beginning, it was really just about communities talking to each other, and these were primarily communities of people who, affinity groups who kind of had something in common from a hobby perspective or an interest perspective or something like that. Now, naturally, anytime people get together in any type of quantity, businesses are going to notice that stuff, and so businesses started noticing this with MySpace. They started noticing it with some of the other types of social media that were out there. Then when Facebook came out, and Facebook really was originally just built for college students, and it stayed within just the college community where the college kids could talk to each other on certain campuses, and ultimately started to open up a little bit more until finally, there was that magic number of people out there that businesses started noticing and saying, hey, we want to get out there too. Now, businesses just jumped in and started saying, well, there's all the, my gosh, if there's, 100 million people out there, or whatever it is now, 800 million people out there on something like Facebook, they just go, well, surely our audiences, our markets are out there. And they might well be. And your buyers, the people that you want to talk to, are probably out there. Here's the issue that I have with social media, and this came out really well in a speech that I gave. Bridget, I'm not sure if you were there in the room when I spoke at NTEA, at the National Truck Equipment Association's event, the Work Truck Show, a couple months ago, and we were talking about the social media situation, and for example, we were talking about Pinterest, which is kind of one of the real super shiny objects right now in social media. And the question, and I asked the question, how many of you are participating in Pinterest right now? Now, not that many raised their hands because it was still fairly early in the attention of social media people, but there were a handful of people who raised their hands, and I said, "Okay, what do you use Pinterest for?" And each one of them had a different answer. I mean, one woman said that she finds recipes on there. Another woman said she finds things to decorate her home with. She likes home decorating. Another person talked about some type of travel pictures that they were looking for, things like that, or places to travel to, things. And the point was that, and then I asked them, now, do you go on there for business? And every single one of them said, well, no, I don't. I go on there for these personal reasons. And that's my point. My point is that when we are talking about business, that really the number one thing we always have to look at is the market, right? We look at who our market is. But in order for us to be able to communicate with our market effectively, there has to be a couple of things going on here. And one of them is that there has to be some way for that market to gather. They have to kind of get together with each other, and that might be, I mean, and, the old way of doing it was at trade shows or conventions or something like that. Still just as reliable, still just as viable as ever. But now we've expanded beyond things like trade shows. We've now expanded into the online world, where now there are there might be ways for us to communicate with people that way. I should also say, other ways that they would gather with each other would be, say, by reading certain magazines, and and we see that today too with trade publications, whether they're in print or whether they're online. But they're gathering in those areas, and as long as we can find them gathering, we now have an efficient way of communicating with them. We now have, or an efficient opportunity to communicate with them. This is why social media is so difficult, and I believe it will get better. I believe that we will see things change to where there will be ways to use social media that will be more effective for corporations. But right now, it's difficult for us to find groups who gather, so to speak, and also not only gather, but they are talking to each other about our area of interest. Okay, and it might be whether you're in manufacturing, or whether you're in the pet industry, or whether you're in the truck utility truck world or something like that. But that you are not only gathering in one place, but you're also talking to each other that way. And as long as you can find a group like that, well, now you've got a market that you can efficiently communicate with. And that, to me, is really, really crucial to any success with any marketing tool. Now, that said, there are certainly groups on social media that are gathering. I mean, but you take a look at it, and it's slowly they're coming on there. Now, the early ones, I mean, high tech. If you're in the high tech world, well, if you're not on social media, then obviously you're making a big mistake. But there are, but other markets are coming online more slowly than that. So, like, the question of how do we find ROI with social media, it just really goes back to, how do you find ROI from marketing? That's really what it's all about. You have to ask the same questions. I believe you have to ask the same questions that you would, for social media, that you would ask whether you are using trade advertising or telemarketing or direct mail or trade shows or any of those other tools. You still go in with the same type of expectations that you would have. If you can communicate with people in social media. Now, again, let me back up here for a second. Okay, see, if I'm looking at a marketing tool, and it doesn't matter what marketing tool it is, I'll use trade shows as an example, because there were actually quite a few questions on there about trade shows, and I guess I should have made that one of the categories too. But trade shows, when you go to a trade show, you might say, all right, I want to go write orders at the trade show, and that's all well and good. More and more trade shows, the buyers are not writing orders. So what do you do at the trade show? So sometimes, and people often say to me, well, I'm there to gather leads. And that could be, you could be gathering leads from direct mail, from trade shows, from any of these other things, okay? But really, what is the pure objective of exhibiting at a trade show? Well, the pure objective is to get a qualified prospect to move one step. That's it. That's all it is. You want to get them to move one step. What is the next step? All right. You're not trying to, if they're not going to buy on the spot, then you're not trying to sell them on the spot. You're trying to get them to agree to move to the next step. Same thing with if you're doing a direct mail piece to people. You're not trying to sell them on your product or service. You're trying to get them to move to the next step. And it might be just respond to this. On social media, to me, it's what is the next step? Okay, so if you are finding a way to communicate with people, then you just have to say, okay, how do I get them to the next step? But that step has to be something that is in your process towards ultimately building that relationship with them. a profitable relationship to where they ultimately are going to place an order with you. So it's sort of like saying, we got the funnel or you got the conveyor belt, however you want to look at it, is that you want to push them farther down the funnel or you want to push them farther, get them farther down the conveyor belt. No matter what tool you use, you want them to move farther down the that conveyor belt. So measuring ROI from social media is no different than measuring ROI from anything else. It's, are you able to put them on the conveyor belt? Are you able to get them to move the next step in the conveyor belt? Are you able to qualify them? If you're not able to qualify them, that makes it really, really hard. See, that makes it really hard. See, you can qualify people via direct mail by picking the right lists. You can qualify people at trade shows through your conversations, things like that. So it's very, very difficult to just prove ROI just by being on social media. So the idea of justifying it to your CFO or to your CEO or people like that is to start with, okay, what is our ultimate objective? If our ultimate objective is to make sales, well, then we come backwards from that ultimate objective through the different steps that people have to go through. And then we have to say, okay, does social media fit into that? And if it does, then great, use it. Absolutely, go after it. But you have to get everybody on board on the same page and get them to understand that they what was I saying? Is that they've got to get on. They've got to understand that there are steps that you must take before you can actually start proving, total return on investment, stuff like that. So. Let's see if there's any other social media questions. Just real quick here. Okay. I think that was enough talking about social media. Let's get into some of the other questions. Let's see. What is the most important factor in the marketing plan when launching a new product? I actually already mentioned this once, but anytime you are starting a new product, a new company, a new business, or anything like that, the single most important factor for you is the market, is who is the market. Everything starts with the market. And anytime somebody says to me, how do I get more successful? I say, well, first tell me who's your market. And then what do you know about that marketplace? What problem do they have? What painful situation? What challenge do they have that you can help them solve? And it always starts with understanding the market. That's the number one single question that you should know. Now, it's interesting because that's not anything that we haven't all heard before, but really, I'll ask people, so who's your market? And then they'll give me an answer to the market, and I'll say, okay, so do you know that market really well? And they say, oh yeah, absolutely. And then when we get into real deeper questions, the fact of the matter is that they really don't know the market as well as maybe they could. They really don't know that. I'll say, okay, you're selling to, and let's say pet stores, all right? Well, pet stores in cities probably have different problems than pet stores out in the suburbs. Pet stores that have hospitals attached to them, or maybe their own pet hotel attached to them, have different challenges than pet stores that don't have that stuff. The independent pet store owner who has one store has different challenges than somebody who has 4 or 5 stores. So the idea that that their market or their business as well as they know it is actually a huge advantage for you when you are marketing to them, because you can you can really talk to them from their perspective, from their challenges, from their problems, and when you can do that and you can show them that you are there to help them solve those problems, solve those challenges, well, then that's a huge deal. That's a very, very huge deal for them, and you're gonna get a lot more business out of people that are like that. What are the most effective methods to reach buyers in a business-to-business marketing situation? Well, B2B. What are the most effective methods? Well, again, the market tells you this. Here's, let's go back to where the question of understanding the market first of all, and then seeing, okay, where do they hang out? Where do they gather? Where do they get like this? And in some markets, whether it could have something to do with the age of the average people in the marketplace. It could have something to do with location. Is it more local than it is national? That type of stuff. Where do they gather, and how do they prefer to receive information? So, understanding your marketplace by surveying them and talking to them and saying, okay, where do you get your information? Where do you get help in solving the problems that you have right now? What are you doing to make your business grow? What are you doing to make your business more efficient? If you survey them and talk to them and find out from them these things, they might tell you. They'll tell you whether they're on social media or not. They'll tell you what kind of magazines they're reading. They'll also tell you what else they're looking at, and those types of tools that you will have that you can use that are more effective with that specific group. Each group has its own tool or set of tools that they prefer to have, and it's not a question of us wanting to communicate with somebody a certain way. Like one of the questions on here deals with, we've invested a lot in electronic marketing lately, and most of our budget is going into e-marketing these days. Well, I guess my response to that would be, well, who told you to do that? Did your marketplace tell you to do that? Did your marketplace tell you that that's where they prefer to receive information from you? Did they tell you that that's how they currently get information? Did they tell you they stopped using other tools? If they did, fine. Then go after it. But if they didn't tell you that, then are we falling into the trap of just saying, oh, you know what, gee, there's this big shiny object out there, we should just go after that, because all the press is talking about it, everybody's talking about it, everybody's got their smartphones and their iPads and everything like that, and so that must be where we're supposed to go. You know what, prove it to me first. Give me the proof that I have to be out there. Give me the proof that that's where I'm supposed to be right now. Most of you will notice that I am not super active on Facebook. I am somewhat active on Twitter, but not really as active as I was back when it first came out. I just don't see my marketplace, spending a lot of time there. And so it's I really don't see that much of an impact for me to spend the time, in those areas. So I spend more time talking to people via my blog, talking to people via LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn works better for me, might not work for you at all. So when we're talking about that type of stuff, and I'm going to get back into being much more active in using direct marketing again, and direct mail, like I used to in the past. There were some questions about is traditional. There was one question about, is traditional marketing dead? Let me make sure I've got that question right. Let's see. I heard that traditional marketing is dead, and people don't believe in traditional advertising anymore. Why do big companies continue to invest in it? Well, first there's two. I'm gonna get into semantics here. You asked the question. I heard that traditional marketing is dead, and people don't believe in traditional advertising anymore. Those are two different things to me. Two different things. Advertising, to me, is companies relate to, not relate. Companies fall back on traditional advertising. In other words, like just trade ad, brochureware advertising, and that stuff. When nothing else is working, or when their marketing is boring or something like that, or they have nothing else to fall back on. Advertising is outbound. Advertising is you're shoving a whole bunch of stuff outside and hoping that something will stick and somebody will respond. Marketing in my opinion, when marketing is used right, it's actually an inbound tool. Where marketing is, you are creating a communication path with your marketplace. You are educating them. You are getting them to understand the things that you are able to do for them, so that if they feel that they have a need for your type of product or service, that they raise their hand and they contact you. It's inbound marketing. Now, the idea that traditional marketing is dead, no, traditional marketing is not dead. There's every marketing tool is still an arrow in your quiver. When you add them all up, I mean, now we've got dozens and dozens of potential marketing tools that we can use out there. Yes, there are advertising tools that you can use out there, but I do believe that the traditional advertising as brochureware, where it's just more like, okay, hey, we're the ABC, corporation, and here's a picture of our building, and we're really, really big, and maybe see us at a trade show or something like that. That type of an ad to me is God's way of saying you just got too much money, and I think that you should get away from that. You can use trade advertising for direct response. You can use that for direct response. I mean, the king of that, or kind of the godfather of that, who started this all, was Joe Sugarman, back several years, 30, 40 years ago, I guess, something like that, when he started doing ads in airline magazines that looked like they were just copy. They weren't just big pictures of a product and aren't we pretty and aren't we nice and sold at finer stores everywhere, right? No, his was an ad that was very heavy in copy, talking all about the product, talking all about the problems and the challenges that this product was solving for people, and why this product was so great, and all the benefits and all the features and benefits for that product. Ultimately, down to the point of saying, okay, now you can order it. Here's an 800 number. Here's a coupon. Here's here's a way to communicate with us that you can buy the product from us now. And so, and Joe created a huge industry of direct response advertising via traditional trade advertising or consumer advertising. Still very viable today. But most people don't go in and do an ad like that. You almost never see ads like that anymore. Or I shouldn't say anymore, but you almost never see ads like that, especially in B2B trade advertising. I don't know why. But there's nothing wrong with going. I don't see any reason why you can't do that. So to me, all marketing has to do with somebody's going to respond to you. Everything you are doing is getting them to respond and go to that very next step in the relationship building process. And it kind of brings me to a question that is kind of a combination of social media and the other stuff, because this is an interesting question. I had to read it twice just to even kind of understand it. And this person says, I'd like to know about getting new clients. I help others with social media, and my clients tend to not be on there already. Most of the advice I see is along the lines of be active in social media. But since my clients aren't, until I start them, and aren't necessarily very computer savvy, that's not useful. Well, the reason I find that very interesting, because what this person is telling me is that they're taking people who are not active on social media, and they are getting them active on social media. My first perspective on that is, well, why aren't they active on social media? Is it they're not active because they just don't know, or are they not active because their market's not active on it? I mean, yeah, people do need to learn about social media, and so there's certainly a place for that. Absolutely. But if they're not hanging out on social media, you cannot market to them on social media. It's that old thing that Dr. Robert Schuller question asked me, when I was a guest on the Hour of Power many years ago, and he said, Steve, you should go out and be a professional speaker. And I said, I should? And I didn't know that you could get paid to speak. And he goes, oh yeah, you can get paid a lot of money. And I said, well, where do you find people who hire speakers? And he said, well, how do you hunt moose? And I'm, what? And he goes, well, would you go to Florida to hunt moose? I said, no, I guess I'd go to Canada. And he'd say, and would you hunt moose with a tennis racket? I said, no, I guess I would have to get a moose gun or something like that, right? You have to have moose bait and that type of thing. And he said, yeah, in other words, you got to go to where the moose are, and you got to do things to attract them. So if you are teaching people about social media, but you're teaching people who are not using social media, well, guess what? You can't use social media to market to them. You got to use other stuff. You got to use traditional media to market to them. So let's see. I think I'd answered that question. Throw that one away. I already answered that. Let's see. Innovation. Let me get into innovation here because time flies, right? Innovation. Here's kind of the type of question that I'm getting here is, how do you approach an over-conservative management team about more wild, attention-grabbing marketing campaign ideas? Well, I think your answer was in your question. If they are overly conservative, then it's going to be really hard for them to swallow wild, attention-getting, ideas. You have to, at least from my perspective, you have to feed them bite-sized stuff. You have to start feeding them stuff that they can swallow first. You have to sit down with them and say, okay, I understand that you're conservative, or don't even get into that, but you just say, you maybe push the envelope a little bit and get them to taste, something that's a little bit fresher, a little bit newer, that to them probably is still this wild, attention-getting idea. To you, it's probably, oh my gosh, ho-hum, it's just very, very, this is not a big deal. But, if they're the ones who are writing the checks, if they're the ones who are making the decisions, then they are also like a customer of yours. You got to sell them first. So you can't sell them something that they don't want to buy, is really what it ultimately gets down to. You've got to you got to sell them a little bit. Give them a little bit more, and once they taste it, then you can give them a little bit more past that. Once they taste that, you give them a little bit more past that. But you just cannot go out there, and there were some other questions, things like how do you get people, to think out of the box who are stuck in the box. Same thing is you have to take them one step at a time, and educate them very slowly, and as painlessly for them as possible. Let's see. All right. Here's a question from a retail perspective. Okay. How often should I change displays to make my store seem fresh and interesting even to a long-time customer? Well, the example that I would use is Tide. Tide, and I've written about this in my blog before. Some of you might remember this, but Tide basically changes itself every 6 weeks. If you go out and, obviously most of us are when we buy laundry detergent, it lasts longer than that, so it's more than 6 weeks. But if you notice that when you go out to buy Tide, that you buy a box of Tide today, or you buy the liquid or whatever it is, and today it says Tide with blue bleach flecks in it, right? Well, then in 6 weeks they're going to come back and they're going to say, Tide pure and white, and fresh aroma, or something like that. New, and it always says new on the side. So and it's real interesting how I have fun going to the store and kind of looking at the Tide displays and as they're set up, and just to see, okay, what are they coming up with? What's the new thing this time? What's the new thing this time? And they always come up with something new. So the idea is, Tide basically thinks they have to do it every 6 weeks. For you, you just have to, how often? I don't think there's an answer to how often you need to do it, but I think that you need to kind of follow the Tide pattern of, I would say it's how often do your clients come into the store? How often do your customers come to the store? And if they're coming, if after 4 or 5 or 6 times they're still seeing the same thing over and over again, well, then I would say that you probably need to freshen that up a bit. But Tide is always the greatest example for following that. Here is, let's see. Oh, what if anything can be done when a dissatisfied customer smears you all over the internet? Obviously, not having dissatisfied customers is the best answer, but what's the second best answer? You know what? I need to get a link for you, but there's a guy who, a friend of mine, and I'm going in to look on in my Gmail account here for his website, because this guy has the best answer for you. His name is David Frey, Frey, and he actually had a post about this not long ago. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Okay. David Frey. Okay, if you go to marketingblogger.com and look for, and I would say do a search in his, or look in the list, but he has a post in there called, and the title is David Frey is a Scammer, parentheses, a case study in reputation management. And David talks here about, he says a few weeks ago, I learned that if you type the name David Frey into Google, the #1 listing at that time was David Frey is a scammer. So it's exactly what you're talking about. But and David goes on to talk about exactly how he handled it and what you can do to fix that. There's a company out there called Reputation.com, and they say that they can erase bad comments, or people like that, they're smearing you all over the internet. Fact of the matter is no, they can't. They cannot erase anything. What they can do is try to create new information that then ranks higher on the Google search, and ultimately pushes it down to where it's off the first page, and then hopefully off the second page, and stuff like that. It gets pushed down to where it's not paid any attention to, and that's what they do, and that's kind of like what David suggested that you do. But he goes through a real step-by-step way of handling that type of thing. Let's see. So so go see David at marketingblogger.com, and if you talk to him, tell him I sent you there. Let's see. As a distributor for pet products, I have been facing lately some issues with my biggest accounts. They've started importing directly either from China and European companies and manufacturers. This will affect my business. Yeah, no kidding. How should I react? And should I start concentrating on the smaller account other than the big ones? Well, okay, this gets down to what makes you uncopyable. What makes you superior to every other option that's out there? What are you offering to your marketplace that price becomes as low an issue as possible? If you're not offering anything that is different, all things being equal, people always buy on price. We all do. And so the important thing is that you either have to look for ways to change that to where you are offering something, and I'm not talking about from a product perspective. I'm just talking about what are you offering? What is the branding proposition? What is the value proposition that you are giving people that makes them stay with you? Larger accounts do stuff like this. This has been going on for years and years. It's even, and you sell to Costco now, and Kay and I were walking through Costco the other day, and they sell. For years they would sell Pepsid, anti-acid stuff, right? And then all of a sudden one day, here comes the Kirkland brand of Pepsid, right? And they still carry Pepsid, but I'm sure they don't sell nearly as much as they do of the Kirkland brand. And just last week we saw the same thing happen with some other types of vitamins and supplements that they were selling there too. My dad had this happen to him with another major customer many years ago with his products. And people, big companies are just always going to look for ways to get it cheaper, and if all things are equal. So should you go after smaller accounts? Well, yeah, absolutely. You should go after smaller accounts anyway, because the smaller accounts eventually become bigger accounts, or that's where the big accounts come from. But in the meantime, with the bigger accounts, you've got to look for ways to differentiate yourself from whatever else that how they're able to replace you. So there. Okay, got that. Let me see what else. Okay, let's get into productivity. Here's a how do you stop working in your business to find the time to work on your business as it relates to marketing, innovation, etc.? The interruptions keep getting in the way. And then there was another question. Let's see. There were actually about 3 or 4 questions regarding productivity, but here was another one that I particularly liked. If I find another hour per week, for marketing, how should I spend it? I'm a little guy currently in charge of everything from sales to production to delivery. Okay, let's first talk about finding time to work on your business as it relates to marketing and innovation. The interruptions keep getting in the way. Well, okay, harsh reality. You make yourself available to interruptions, you're going to get interrupted. Period. We work on the things that we make priorities. If marketing and innovation are priorities to you, then you must create block time for that. You must create uninterruptible unique time for the things that are important to you. I look at business as being the formula X over Y. Okay, just X over Y, or the whatever you call it, the fraction X over Y. The Y represents the cost of doing business, and that's both from time, energy, and money. Okay, the X is the income for the business. What actually creates income to your business? So the top is income, basically the bottom is outgo. The danger that I'm as guilty as anybody. I fall into this trap all the time, is that I will get myself focused on, I get my to-do list going, and I get all these things that are really just outgo situations, or outgo stuff, projects that are not adding any revenue to me. And those things just expand, and those are the urgent stuff, as we've all heard in the past. The only way to counteract this stuff, the only way to counteract interruptions, is to block your time. For example, a buddy of mine, Perry Marshall, I was listening to him not too long ago talk about productivity. And he made a comment that I thought was really, dead solid smart and dead solid obvious. And that was that the thing that's causing us most of our time problem these days are two things. It's this computer that I'm sitting in front of right now, and it's this smartphone. These are the things that are causing us our biggest problem. Why? Well, let's just say it's something as simple as email, for example. See, in the good old days of when email first came out, we went online to get email. We would go get our email. We would go on AOL so we could hear, "You've got mail," right? But that's what we would do, and we'd get all jazzy and excited about the fact that we got some emails. We would go get our emails. See, we don't go get our emails anymore. Our emails go get us is what they do. We've got our email program set up to where when emails come in, ding, ding, we hear that little ding. And you know what? We're Pavlov's dogs. We go straight to that computer to see who's emailing us. Who's emailing us? Well, that is unproductive. That takes you away from focused time on something that should be important. I've decided lately that I'm going to only check email twice a day. That's it. Every 4 hours or so, I'm going to check email. And that's it. I'm going to give myself, 20, 30 minutes that I will go online, check my email. I'll respond to the ones that I can. And then the ones that I can't will go onto my priority list. And then I will work on those things later on. But I'm going to do that because I need to stop letting other people and email run my life. That's what happens. If marketing is important, and I believe it is critically important, marketing and innovation. In fact, Peter Drucker said the only two things that are important to a company are marketing and innovation, and I agree with him. Then we need to make those a priority. And the priority means that we have to block off time. And it might be the first hour. I often say to people, just block the first hour in the morning. 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, whatever it is. And between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, your phone is turned off, your email is turned off, your door is closed, and people are given instructions that under no circumstance, unless Godzilla himself is blasting through the building, don't open my door. Don't knock on my door. Just leave me alone and let me work on this stuff. That's what that's all about. And I think this is so important that and when you say to me that you can find an extra hour a week, I'm certainly hoping that what you're also saying to me is that you're spending several other hours a week working on marketing, and not just now finding that extra hour to be able to add into it. I think that and I understand as a single a solo business person that you are the chief cook and bottle washer. But again, it all falls into you gotta market. My good friend Nito Cobain taught me this a long time ago. He said the time that you need to market is when you are not busy. And the only other time that is more important than that to market is when you are busy. Because if you don't, revenues stop. Revenues eventually stop, and you've got to market. That's the key to success in your business. So I am planning on doing a productivity program. It might be, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe 3 different webinars about productivity, and I think it'll end up being a product. But what I'm going to do though is I'm going to do it in a series, and you can probably take advantage of that because I do want to talk to you about something I'm going to be doing here in just a second. I want to get into these couple of these announcements. I want to get into kind of following up a little bit with you guys about this idea of Q&A, whether it's monthly Q&A or every other week Q&A or something like that. Let me share with you something. I've talked about this before in some of my webinars that I want to do a Be Different boot camp this summer, and I am still planning on doing this. I'm looking right now at dates in August, possibly September, to do these in Seattle. Be a 3-day event in Seattle. If you are interested and want to be early on the list, send me an email. I know that I had talked about this before, and a number of you had contacted me about that. But I am now full steam ahead in putting this thing together. This is going to be a pretty intensive 3 days of being different and learning how to separate yourself from the competition, what I call uncopyable superiority, which will hopefully impact your business for a long, long time. So if you're interested in that, send me an email at bedifferent@theadventure.com, and I will put you on the list. Obviously, there's no obligation. You'll get first priority to register. You'll also receive a substantial discount. The other thing, which is a new announcement that I want to make, is MIB, Marketing, Innovation, and Branding. I am going to start a monthly program for my clients and my customers and my BFFs, of which you guys all fit right into. And this monthly program is going to do this. Here's what we're going to do. Number one is you're going to get a snail mail from me called the Steve Report, or the Steve Miller Report. And in that report, I'm going to write about something that has to do with marketing, innovation, or branding, or maybe all three, where I'm going to talk about either case studies or ideas or things that I know I've learned over the years, and I'm going to give very specific examples of what you can do to be more successful in those areas. It's going to be probably a fairly in-depth, 8+ pages, I'm guessing, every month of information, and kind of like my own monthly newsletter that we're starting, publication each month. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to add a once-a-month webinar teleseminar to this package, where we will get together and do, and we will have a private get-together with my MIB gang. And again, teaching you stuff that I've learned and sharing stuff. This is where I think that I'm going to set up that productivity program, so that what I'll actually do is, like I say, it'll be 1, 2, maybe 3 different programs where I'm actually doing the productivity program to the MIB gang, and then recording it and putting it together in a putting it together in a package that will ultimately be sold on my website to everybody else. But in this case, it will be part of the monthly package. So, if you're interested in productivity, then I think that's probably going to be a pretty early thing that I'm going to be doing with the MIB gang, and it won't cost you any more than it would to just be a subscriber to this. You will also be the guinea pig for new products, such as this productivity presentation I'm talking about, and any others that I plan on trying out. I will try them out on the MIB gang first. You will have a private website which will archive everything, all the webinars, all the newsletters, everything that we do together will be a private website just for you guys, not for anybody else. And your first month will be free. Okay. Now, what this is going to be is, ultimately, this is going to cost $97 a month for regular people to sign up and get this, to get all this package put together. You guys are not regular people. What I also don't have on here is that you also get discounts to all of my products, all of my services and things like that. But for $97 a month, somebody says, whoa, kind of pricey. That's not pricey. $97 a month for an idea that can make you how much money? Ideas are ideas that you can use. I give somebody an idea, and if they make $10,000 off it, then how much is that idea worth? So, but here's what you're going to get for being one of the gang right now. If you go to theadventure.com/MIB right now, there's an explanation of the MIB gang on there for you, but you get a substantial discount. And I mean a big discount, for being part of this gang of mine right now, being kind of my early gang, the early adopters. You've been to my webinars before, you read my blog, you guys have been most of the people on this right now are pretty cool. You are going to be able to get this subscription for $47 a month forever. Okay, you can go in there now and you can sign up in there. There's a join now button. Be sure to read the letter, but I'm going to tell you right now though, here's what you do is when you go in and you click the join now button and you fill out your name and your credit card information, there's going to be a spot in there that says secret code. Secret code. And the secret code are the words Kelly Golf. Kelly space golf. Now I've got that written on the page for you too, all in lowercase. And when you put those in and click the button next to it or the link next to it that says validate, then that is going to change the price from $97 to $47. And again, like I said, you're going to get your first month for free, so you'll be able to get the first issue and the first webinar and stuff like that. And if you don't like it, you can cancel, and there's no cost to you or anything like that. And of course, you can always cancel later on down the road. I'll send Guido after you, but that's okay too. So, and like I say, you're also going to get first access. You're going to get discounts for other products and services, like, you know, building this one productivity product via there. You'll be able to you'll get access to that via the MIB gang, and because it's probably going to be a product I'm going to sell for a couple $100. So, but you're going to get it for free. So go to theadventure.com/MIB and get signed up right now, because I'm only going to hold about 100 spots open for that, and I don't know how long I'm gonna leave it open at that price, but you guys get first shot at it today, and so I hope that you sign up, because I'm going to get the first issue out in about 11 days. So I'd be anxious to hear comments back from you. Send me a send me an email. Send me a response to steve@twohatmarketing.com. Tell me about this. I think maybe in the future I'm looking for ways to make stuff like this, webinars like this, more efficient, more focused. Maybe one time we'll focus on marketing, one time we'll focus on innovation, one time we'll focus on branding, or things like that. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for sending in all your questions. I'll be anxious to hear your comments, and I will definitely be anxious to see those of you that sign up for the MIB gang. All right, this is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad, right there. There's the kid again. Thanks so much for being on the call today. I hope you got some good stuff from me. I hope I didn't ramble too much in some of those areas, but I'm trying. So I'll see you on the internet. Bye.